I love superheroes. My interests tend to change pretty frequently, but superheroes have remained one of the few constants in my life. Like many other kids growing up in the 2010s, I was obsessed with the MCU. That was where my love both for superheroes and for film as a whole started. It's no secret that, as of late, superhero films have definitely taken a step down in terms of quality, although some would argue that they were never good to begin with. This year is looking to be an exciting one for fans of comic book movies, though. There was, of course, the recently released Captain America: Brave New World, of which no one can quite make up their minds as to whether it was good or not. But we're also getting Thunderbolts, Fantastic Four, and of course, Superman. I've wanted to cover comic book films on this channel for quite a while now. In fact, my first few videos are on Spider-Man, one of my favorite characters in all of fiction. I never quite felt the time was right, however, but as previously mentioned, 2025 is looking to be a major return for superhero movies. So in anticipation for that, and more specifically the upcoming Superman, let's take a look at where it all began for superheroes on the big screen. Of course, the 1978 adaptation of Superman wasn't the first ever superhero adapted into a film, but saying this wasn't a landmark title for the genre, both commercially and critically, would be an outright lie. This film shifted the public's perception on what superheroes were and what a science fiction film could be. The 1-2 punch of Star Wars and Superman led to a major rise in the mainstream popularity of science fiction. Without such films, we wouldn't have things like the MCU, which, love it or hate it, has served as a vehicle for many to get into discussing and having a greater appreciation for film as a whole. So without further ado, let's take a look at the monumental and influential Superman, the movie. The film begins with a prologue of sorts. Nowadays, most of this exposition is common knowledge, whether or not you consider yourself a fan of the character. And this opening is the reason Superman's backstory has become a major part of pop culture. To briefly summarize, Superman comes from a planet named Krypton. His real name is Kal-El and his father is Jor-El. Krypton is about to be destroyed by a nearby star, so Jor-El sends his son to planet Earth in order for him to survive. The yellow rays from the sun are what give Superman his otherworldly abilities. After landing on Earth, Kal-El is rescued and raised by an elderly couple in Smallville, Kansas. The couple's names are Jonathan and Martha Kent. They named the boy Clark. We then fast forward to Clark's time in high school, and suddenly Jonathan Kent dies of a heart attack. Soon after this, Clark discovers a glowing crystal that leads him to the Arctic and the Fortress of Solitude. Here, with the help of Jor-El's floating head, he trains to master his powers and become Superman. Now this all sounds well and good, and if you aren't familiar with the character, all of this context is likely necessary. My problem is this, however. Guess how long this prologue is? Maybe 15 minutes, 20 minutes, perhaps even 30 minutes? No, this takes up 48 minutes of the film's runtime. This is already a difficult pill to swallow upon first viewing, but on rewatch it becomes unbearable. Now that I've gotten that out of the way though, I will say this. That is my only major gripe with this movie. From here on, this narrative has all the charm expected of a classic Superman story and moves at a fairly brisk pace too. I don't have much to say about said narrative, however. It's a fairly basic plot line of Superman stopping a bad guy. In this case, Lex Luthor. I like how grounded it is though, with Superman stopping a simple real estate scheme instead of fighting Darkseid or Doomsday. It fits the tone they were going for here, and the plot being so simple allows us as an audience to focus more on the characters. Two aspects of this movie that really surprised me were the score and the writing. The score was done by the legendary John Williams. Of course, the main theme of this film is incredibly iconic, and in a similar vein to the Spider-Man cartoon theme, has become synonymous with the character of Superman as a whole. It's not just the main theme though. The other tracks are also appropriately epic and grand. As for the writing, I love the characterization of Superman in this film. I personally don't care much for comic accuracy, I simply want the characters to fit the tone of the narrative they're a part of. And this Superman is absolutely perfect in that sense. As Clark Kent, he's mild-mannered and cowardly, and as Superman, he's charismatic and brave. A trait that is shared between both, however, is his kindness. A small detail that I absolutely love is how Superman says bye as he's leaving in each scene. He never just flies off. It's small, but it reflects his genuine care for people and his humility, qualities that make him even more likable. Lois Lane is also extremely well written. She is a daring reporter who isn't afraid of anything. This naturally puts her in harm's way multiple times, requiring Superman to come to her rescue. It isn't purely coincidence that Superman happens to be there whenever she needs him, however, as Clark also openly has feelings for her. That leads us to the best scene in the movie, the interview on Lois' balcony. While the plot has hardly moved forward in this scene, this moment serves as the heart and soul of the film in my eyes. Firstly, the performances. Margot Kidder and Christopher Reeve both do an excellent job here, and the chemistry between the pair is palpable. While we're on the topic, Christopher Reeve does a particularly excellent job throughout the film. He essentially has to play two completely different characters with Clark Kent and Superman, and he makes both feel believable. I've always doubted the whole concept of people not knowing how Clark Kent is Superman due to a simple pair of glasses and a different hairdo. But Christopher Reeve's performance here allows that concept to make sense. I see why the residents of Metropolis don't ever suspect Clark Kent could be anything more than himself. He plays the role of a timid coward exceptionally well. In fact, just after the scene, Clark Kent slips into a Superman persona while he thinks about telling Lois about himself, and we see a live transformation of Clark Kent to Superman. He simply takes off his glasses and fixes his posture, and all of a sudden it really does feel like a different character. Back to the scene on the balcony though. Along with these great performances and the incredible character acting, the entire scene is coupled with engaging dialogue. As was previously mentioned, Superman is incredibly charismatic in this film, and while he does have some corny one-liners, which Lois in particular does call attention to, he also drops some smoother lines.
Do you have a girlfriend?
No, I don't, but if I did, Miss Lane, you'd be the first to know about it.
Even here though, Superman's genuineness is seen, as even he can't help but smile at his own line. On top of this, there's small things like him brushing away his cape while sitting down. It takes this character that can accomplish inhuman feats and grounds him in reality. Zooming out from the small stuff now and looking at the big picture though, what is the point of this scene narratively? Well, it serves as Superman's formal introduction to the world. In fact, it's here where Lois Lane gives him that moniker. It also sets up Clark's struggle seeing through lead, which is expanded upon in the third act, and it reiterates his origin. But as an audience, our attention isn't drawn to any of that. We are focused on the chemistry of these characters, the witty dialogue, and the beginning of this romance. This is one good thing to come from the extended prologue. It allows the film the freedom to have scenes that would normally be relegated to exposition dumps, instead focus on character building. A particular line that caught my attention was this one.
I'm here to fight for truth and justice in the American way.
You're going to end up fighting every elected official in this country.
Many look at the world, society as a whole, and see that it's changed. It's become more corrupt, more deceitful, and even more doomed to fail. In fact, many of you may have heard of the Doomsday Clock. It's meant to represent how close humanity is to complete implosion, destruction by its own hand. With an outlook as bleak as this, it's no wonder people search for symbols of hope, and many find this hope in works of fiction. They see characters like Superman with his unfailing goodness and strive to be like that. Others, however, perhaps due to being jaded by society, can't allow themselves to find solace in these characters. They think if their fictional superheroes aren't grounded in gritty realism, then they aren't good. They must have intense moral dilemmas and gray areas. They must struggle like I struggle, or else they make me confront the uncomfortable reality that there's still room for me to improve as a person, or that maybe there's still room for me to hope for a better tomorrow. Superman may seem to be just another fictional character, one who will evolve with the times like everyone else, and to an extent he has, but what he stands for hasn't changed. I cannot stress enough the importance of that. While his comic origins had him stopping domestic abuse and preventing kidnappings, things that he hardly does anymore, what that stood for is the same as it is today. It's hope. Reading of his inhuman feats and perpetual goodness gives people the strength to believe in something. If nothing else, it perhaps brings a smile to someone's face and changes their outlook on the upcoming day. To me, that's what Superman means. It's why I consider him to be one of the most important characters in all of fiction, and this movie adapts that aspect of the character incredibly well. In this film, he doesn't fight superpowered aliens, instead he aims to stop a real estate scheme and protect innocent lives. Later on, some adaptations would lose sight of that purpose, and while still solid films in their own right, they lack the very core of what makes Superman, Superman. I consider this film to be the blueprint, not only for Superman films, but for comic book adaptations as a whole. Not every superhero has to be a symbol of hope and peace, but every superhero adaptation should try and stay true to the core themes of the character. For instance, Captain America should always have an unfailing goodness and selflessness. Batman should always be on the side of justice. The X-Men should always fight for acceptance and a better tomorrow. This is the groundwork that every good comic book adaptation would build on, and its legacy lives on all the way until now. In a strange way, a new Superman being on the horizon has led to the hope that the character was designed to inspire. With the newest iteration of the character soon to come, I can only hope the model Superman 78 left hasn't been lost. And from what I've seen and heard about the film thus far, it seems to be in good hands. I'm excited for the future of both Superman and comic book adaptations as a whole. I hope to be able to cover more films like this on the channel, so let me know if that's something you guys would be interested in. For now, I'm going to go back to my usual style of content though. See you guys in the next one.